rural America is clearly voting conservative. They didn't always, but they do now. Why is that? Take a look at the state of California. It was the bluest state, of course, in the 2016 election, but not every part of the state is Democratic. Many counties in the state's Central Valley voted big numbers for Donald Trump. Victor Davis Hanson is a classics scholar and a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, based at Stanford University. He's also a farmer in the Central Valley, and he just wrote a piece entitled "Why the Central Valley Votes More Conservative," where he described the 2016 election as a revolt by the forgotten masses against the elites. It was a revolt, he said, against, quote, "a world where walls on the border are proof of ignorant xenophobia, gates and walls around private Tony residences are logical measures to ensure security." Professor Hanson joins us now. Professor, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So how would you summarize, so what is the core cultural difference that creates the political divide between rural and urban voters?
I think it has a lot to do with speech and deeds, thought and action. That people in the country, they tend to be a little bit more isolated, and how they dress or how they sound are not as important as what they do. So we've gone now a half century with this best and brightest paradigm where your zip code or your income or the brand of education that you're stamped with is supposed to mean something, and we take that for granted. And people out in the country tend to be a little bit more autonomous. They pump their own water, they deal with their own sewage. So a man or a woman that can repair a hydraulic ram in 10 minutes or get on their belly and take out a transmission, that takes a lot of skill, and it takes a lot of intelligence and ingenuity. And we haven't valued that because we are in this paradigm. You leave this Tony prep school, then you go to an Ivy League or a Stanford, and then you get branded, you go to DuPont Circle, Upper West Side, and we consider you wise. And the people in the interior said, well, wait a minute. We're $20 trillion in debt. You can't speak on a campus without being shouted down. We've got the worst economic growth. Who are you smart guys that gave us that?
Exactly.
We didn't do it. Somebody did. And so I think that they want to judge people with what they do rather than what they say or how they look.
And there's also the point that you make in the piece that the entire system has benefited the people who designed it. Here's how you put it. The Trump revolt was a pushback against the winner-take-all globalization that enriched the populated coasts far more than the spaces in between. My question, since you occupy both worlds, both at Stanford and in the Central Valley, do the coasts realize this? Do they understand what this was about?
No, I don't think they do. I think when they get up in the morning, I'm in a coast right now. My op-ed column is not going to be outsourced to somebody in India. Somebody in Fresno who's a welder might lose his job. So people who do mining and logging and manufacturing and farming, the material things, they're saying to us, wait a minute, you have a granite counter in your kitchen, you have a stainless steel refrigerator, those are nice things. We make these things, and we're not outdated, and we want to look for somebody that recognizes the worth that we contribute to society. You can't eat an app all the time. Right. And you do have to go back to the elemental essence of food and military security and housing and construction. We are the people supply it. We don't have degrees. We're not pajama boys. We don't look and sound like you people. But if you keep taking us for granted, you're going to get more of the same. And that was sort of this tragic shout back to a therapeutic culture.
Right. But it's more than take us for granted. I mean, lots of countries have seen this, the tension between the countryside and the cities. But why the loathing of the people in the cities for the people in the country?
Yeah, that's a very good point, Tucker, and that, I think, is a different subject. That is that the people on the coast or the elites never assume that they have to suffer the ramifications of their own ideology. So people are said to be xenophobic or nativist because they want a wall, and then they look at Mark Zuckerberg, who walls around his estate in Hawaii, or they say, we want reservoirs, we need water, we need dams, and the people on the coast say, well, that's so pre-industrial, we don't do that anymore. And yet San Francisco is supplied by Hetch Hetchy water transfer. So it's a sort of an anger that these people on the coast don't follow the very rules that they imply for whether it's Leonardo DiCaprio flying on a jet and then lecturing us about carbon footprints. They just don't feel that people follow the same rules that are applied to the people in the center, and then they suffer the added indignity of being called xenophobe or blinkered or knuckle draggers, and they get angry. It's an emotional response, as you say.
I live on the coast, and it makes me angry just watching it. Professor Hanson, that was really interesting. Thanks a lot for coming on tonight.
Thank you for having me.